Welcome, dear friends, to a compelling story about a mother's unwavering love, betrayal, and the power of forgiveness. Enjoy the story. The morning sun cast a warm glow through the lace curtains of Mary Johnson's modest living room. At 68, Mary was a frail woman with kind, gentle eyes and a crown of silver hair that spoke of a life filled with love, laughter, and her fair share of heartache. She sat in her favorite armchair, delicately sipping tea from a chipped china cup, as her longtime neighbor and confidant, Nancy Smith, leaned in with a conspiratorial whisper. "Mary, you'll never believe what I just heard down at the grocery store," Nancy said, her eyes wide with excitement. "Your boy Victor is getting married today, and to a wealthy doctor's daughter, no less." Mary felt the teacup slip from her trembling hands, clattering against the saucer. Her heart raced as she struggled to comprehend the news. "Married? My Victor? But he never said a word to me. Why would he keep something like this from his own mother?" Nancy reached out, patting Mary's arm in a gesture of comfort, even as her face twisted with indignation. "It's a crying shame, Mary. After everything you sacrificed for that boy, for him to go and exclude you like this? Unbelievable!" Mary's gaze drifted to the faded photographs of Victor that adorned the walls, snapshots of a young man with a mischievous grin and eyes filled with promise. How had it come to this? Nancy's voice softened, tinged with concern. "Mary, honey, have you forgotten what you went through for him? What you endured?" As if on cue, Mary's mind began to drift, transported back to that fateful day 4 years ago when her world had come crashing down around her. 4 years earlier. The prison visiting room was a stark, colorless box, the air heavy with the weight of shattered dreams and broken promises. Mary sat rigidly in her chair, her hands clasped tightly in her lap, as she watched her son Victor shuffling towards her. He looked so different from the last time she'd seen him, his face etched with lines of guilt and worry. "Ma!" Victor choked out as he collapsed into the chair opposite her, his voice thick with tears. "I'm so sorry. I never meant for you to take the fall for what I did." Mary reached across the table, her weathered hands enveloping his trembling ones. She forced a smile, even as her heart ached with the injustice of it all. "Hush now, Victor. You listen to me. I did what any mother would do for her child. I couldn't bear the thought of you spending your best years locked away in this place." Victor shook his head, his eyes filled with anguish. "But Ma, it's not right. You shouldn't be in here. I'm the one who messed up, not you." Mary squeezed his hands, her gaze fierce with determination. "What's done is done, Victor. Now you listen to me. You're gonna make something of yourself, you hear? You're gonna stay out of trouble and build a good life. That's all I want for you." "I will, Ma," Victor promised, his voice trembling with emotion. "I swear I'll make you proud. I'll visit you every week, and I'll be here the day you walk out of those gates a free woman." But as the weeks bled into months, Victor's visits grew increasingly sporadic. He always had an excuse: work, transportation issues, some vague emergency that required his attention. During his last visit, he had shuffled into the room, his eyes darting nervously, his hands fidgeting in his lap. "Ma," he had mumbled, unable to meet her gaze. "I hate to ask, but I need some money, just a little, to tide me over until I can find a steady job. You know how hard it is out there." Mary had sighed, her heart heavy with a mixture of love and disappointment. She had given up everything for her son, her freedom, her reputation, her very life as she knew it. And still, it seemed, it was never quite enough. But how could she deny him when he was all she had left in the world? With a heavy heart, Mary had agreed, watching as Victor's face lit up with relief and gratitude. She only hoped that one day he would understand the true depth of a mother's love and the sacrifices she had made for him. Nancy's voice, tinged with righteous anger, pulled Mary back to the present. "Well, what are you going to do about it, Mary? You can't just sit back and let him get married without you." Mary felt a sudden surge of determination coursing through her veins. She stood up, her chin lifted, her eyes blazing with resolve. "You're absolutely right, Nancy. I'm going to that wedding. My boy needs his mother, whether he realizes it or not." She marched into her bedroom, dropping to her knees to pull a battered old suitcase from beneath the bed. With trembling hands, she opened it, rifling through the contents until she found what she was looking for: a small, rusted coffee tin. Inside, hidden beneath a stack of yellowed letters and faded photographs, was a meager stack of bills, her life savings, painstakingly collected over the years. Mary counted out the money, her heart racing. It wasn't much, but it would have to suffice. She couldn't let her financial situation stand in the way of being there for her son on his big day. "Nancy!" Mary called out, her voice wavering slightly. "I hate to impose, but could you possibly lend me a dress and some shoes? I'm afraid I don't have anything suitable for a wedding." Nancy appeared in the doorway, a knowing smile on her face, her eyes filled with warmth and understanding. "Say no more, Mary. You just leave everything to me. We'll have you looking like $1,000,000 in no time." As Mary began to pack her suitcase, carefully folding the borrowed dress and shoes alongside containers of homemade food, she couldn't help but feel a flicker of excitement mingled with apprehension. She was really doing this. She was going to see her son get married. Surely he would be thrilled to have her there, wouldn't he? She tried to push down the nagging doubts that clawed at the edges of her mind. Everything was going to be perfect. It had to be. The restaurant was a whirlwind of activity as Mary stepped through the doors, her arms laden with bags, her heart pounding in her chest. She felt out of place amidst the opulent decor and the throngs of well-dressed guests, but she held her head high, determined to make the best of the situation. A kind-eyed receptionist spotted Mary and hurried over, a warm smile on her face. "Welcome. You must be here for the Johnson-Thompson wedding, and you are—" "Mary Johnson," Mary replied, her voice trembling with a mixture of pride and nervousness. "I'm the groom's mother. I've come to surprise him." The receptionist's eyes widened in surprise, but she quickly recovered, her smile never faltering. "Of course, what a lovely surprise. Let me show you to the reception area. I'm sure your son will be thrilled to see you." As Mary entered the room, her eyes scanned the sea of unfamiliar faces, searching for the one person she longed to see. And there he was, her Victor, standing tall and handsome in a crisp tuxedo, his dark hair neatly combed, his face alight with happiness. Mary's heart swelled with a fierce, overwhelming love. That was her boy, all grown up and ready to start a new chapter in his life. But as Victor's gaze landed on Mary, his expression morphed from joy to shock to something darker, more ominous. He strode towards her, his face twisted with anger, his eyes flashing with barely contained rage. "Ma?" he hissed, his voice low and menacing as he grabbed her arm, pulling her roughly to the side. "What the hell are you doing here? Are you trying to ruin everything?" Mary recoiled as if she had been physically struck, her eyes filling with tears of confusion and hurt. "But Victor, I'm your mother. I wanted to be here for you, to share in your special day." "My special day?" Victor snarled, his grip on her arm tightening painfully. "You mean the day I finally break free from your criminal past? The day I start a new life with a respectable family? One that doesn't come with the baggage of a convict mother?" Guests began to gather around them, whispering and staring, their faces etched with a mixture of curiosity and disgust. Victor's voice rose to a shout, echoing through the room like a thunderclap. "I don't want you here, Ma. Your kind doesn't belong in my world anymore. Can't you see that? You're just an embarrassment, a stain on my reputation that I've worked so hard to overcome. Just go before you ruin everything." Just as Mary felt her knees buckle beneath her vision blurring with unshed tears, a strong, steady hand gripped her elbow, keeping her upright. She looked up into the concerned, caring face of Dr. Michael Thompson, the prison physician who had been her sole source of comfort and friendship during those dark, lonely years behind bars. "Enough!" Dr. Thompson's voice boomed through the room, commanding the attention of every guest. He strode purposefully to the microphone, his eyes blazing with righteous indignation. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his tone measured but firm. "I apologize for the interruption, but there seems to be a grave misunderstanding unfolding before us." He placed a gentle hand on Mary's shoulder, a gesture of support and solidarity. This woman standing beside me, Mary Johnson, is not some common criminal to be shunned and disgraced. No, she is a hero, in every sense of the word. A murmur rippled through the crowd, faces etched with confusion and curiosity. Dr. Thompson pressed on, his voice growing stronger, more impassioned with every word. 4 years ago, Mary made the ultimate sacrifice for her son Victor. She took the blame for a robbery that he committed, willingly surrendering her freedom and her reputation to protect him from the consequences of his actions. She languished in prison, enduring unspeakable hardships, while Victor walked free, never once looking back or acknowledging the depths of his mother's love and devotion. Victor's face drained of all color, his eyes wide with panic as he realized the truth was finally being laid bare for all to see. He opened his mouth to protest, but no words came out, his voice stolen by the weight of his own guilt and shame. And now, Dr. Thompson continued, his gaze sweeping across the room, on the very day that Victor should be honoring his mother, thanking her for the sacrifices she made, he chooses instead to cast her aside, to pretend she doesn't exist, all for the sake of his own selfish ambition. Shame on you, Victor Johnson. Shame on you for your cruelty, your ingratitude, your utter lack of humanity. As the doctor's words hung heavy in the air, a figure in white emerged from the stunned crowd. It was Emily, Dr. Thompson's daughter and Victor's intended bride, her face streaked with tears, her eyes filled with a mixture of sorrow and resolve. She approached Mary, her steps slow but purposeful, and gently took the older woman's hands in her own. "Mary," she whispered, her voice trembling with emotion, "I am so sorry for what you've endured. You are a true testament to the power of a mother's love, and I am honored to stand in your presence." Then, turning to face Victor, Emily slowly removed the glittering engagement ring from her finger, pressing it into his palm with a sense of finality. "I'm sorry, Victor," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper, "but I cannot marry a man who would treat his own mother with such callousness and cruelty. You are not the man I thought you were, and I cannot build a life with someone who has so little regard for the sacrifices of others." With that, she linked her arm through her father's and walked out of the room, her head held high, leaving Victor standing alone amidst the wreckage of his own making. "I've ruined everything," Mary sobbed, her face buried in her hands as she sat beside Dr. Thompson in a quiet office, away from the chaos of the reception. "I never should have come here. Victor was right. I don't belong in his world, not anymore." Dr. Thompson gently took her hands, his eyes filled with warmth and compassion. "No, Mary," he said softly, his voice a soothing balm to her battered soul. "It is Victor who doesn't belong in a world where a mother's love is treated as a burden rather than the precious gift it truly is. What he did today was unforgivable, but please, don't let his actions diminish your own worth." He leaned in closer, his voice dropping to a whisper, as if sharing a secret meant only for her ears. "Mary, you are an extraordinary woman. Your strength, your resilience, your capacity for love in the face of unimaginable adversity. These are qualities to be celebrated and cherished, not hidden away like some shameful secret. You have endured so much, and yet your heart remains pure, untainted by bitterness or resentment. That, my dear, is a rare and beautiful thing indeed." Mary felt a flicker of hope ignite within her, a tiny ember that refused to be extinguished by the cruelty of others. Perhaps Dr. Thompson was right. Perhaps it was time she started valuing herself, embracing her own worth, regardless of her past mistakes or the judgment of others. As Dr. Thompson and Mary drove home, the two of them sipping from a shared bottle of red wine and marveling at the day's unexpected twists and turns, Mary felt a sense of peace wash over her. She had survived prison, survived the heartbreak of a son's betrayal, and emerged somehow stronger, more resilient than ever before. But as they pulled up to Mary's humble home, Mary was shocked to see two figures huddled on her front steps, Victor and Emily, their faces etched with a mixture of sorrow and remorse. "Ma!" Victor choked out, his voice thick with tears as he stumbled to his feet. "I'm so sorry. I was a fool, an ungrateful wretch. I let my own selfish ambition blind me to the depths of your love. and I will regret that for the rest of my life. Please, if you can find it in your heart to forgive me." Mary stepped out of the car, her heart racing, hardly daring to believe the scene unfolding before her eyes. She had dreamed of this moment for so long, had imagined all the things she would say, all the anger and hurt she would unleash upon her wayward son. But as she looked into Victor's eyes, saw the genuine remorse and desperation etched across his face, all thoughts of anger and recrimination melted away, replaced by an overwhelming surge of love and compassion. "Oh, my sweet boy," she whispered, pulling him into a fierce, bone-crushing embrace. "There is nothing to forgive. You are here now, and that is all that matters. I love you, Victor, more than you can possibly imagine, and I always will, no matter what." Emily stepped forward then, her hand resting protectively on the gentle swell of her stomach. "Mary," she said softly, her eyes shining with unshed tears, "there's something else you should know. Victor and we're going to have a baby, your grandchild, and we want nothing more than for this child to grow up knowing the fierce, unconditional love of his grandmother." Mary felt her heart expand with a joy so profound, it nearly took her breath away. Tears streamed down her face as she gathered Emily into her arms, marveling at the miraculous turn of events that had brought them all together. Just then, Nancy came bursting out of her house, still clad in her bathrobe, her hair in curlers. "What in the world is going on out here?" she demanded, her eyes wide with curiosity. Then, catching sight of Emily, her face softened with recognition. "Why, you must be Victor's bride," she exclaimed, clasping her hands together in delight. "Oh, how wonderful! You know the whole neighborhood just adores Mary. We should have the wedding right here in her front yard. We'll show this young man just how much his mother means to all of us." As the sun began to rise over the quiet street, casting everything in a warm golden glow, Mary looked around at the faces of her loved ones, old and new. Her heart felt fuller, more complete than it had in years. She knew there would still be challenges ahead, wounds to heal and trust to rebuild. But for now, in this perfect moment, all that mattered was the love that surrounded her, the unbreakable bonds of family and friendship that had seen her through her darkest days and brought her into the light. Mary closed her eyes, breathing in the sweet morning air, and sent up a silent prayer of thanks. She had been through hell and back, had endured more than any mother should ever have to face. But in the end, love had triumphed. And really, when all was said and done, what more could any mother ask for?